Right now in America, dangerous seeds are being planted that could turn into something much more dangerous than the current war between Russia and Ukraine. On March 3rd, 2022, a mere 7 days after Russia's formal invasion of Ukraine began, former United States Secretary of State Michael Pompeo traveled to Taiwan, where he was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to deliver a keynote speech. He sent this message to the world. It is my view that the U.S. government should immediately take necessary and long overdue steps to do the right and obvious thing. That is to offer the Republic of China, Taiwan, America's diplomatic recognition as a free and sovereign country. Is the United States and China destined for a war over Taiwan? Well, here's how I see things unfolding. Everyone, before we get started, I want to take a moment and thank Webull for sponsoring today's video. Webull is a trading platform that I use to trade stocks and cryptocurrencies, and by simply opening and funding a new account with Webull, they're going to gift you 5 free stocks. In addition, after you complete one crypto trade, Webull is going to gift you an additional $5 worth of cryptocurrency for free. Simply use the promotional link in the description to get started, and let's jump into today's important video. Over the past few months, I've been reading a plethora of American political articles that all have one thing in common. They are all written with the goal of conditioning American citizens to believe the best option for a safer world is for the United States government to increase the defense budget, increase our military presence in Asia, and intimidate the Chinese government. Take, for example, this article from Foreign Policy entitled, "Washington Must Prepare for War with Both Russia and China." Georgetown University professor Matthew Koenig states, "First, Washington should increase defense spending." Now, as an American citizen, I have to be honest. Out of all the things that our government can spend money on, I really think that defense spending should really not see an increase right now. Over the last couple of years, we have been ravaged by a pandemic that has caused tens of millions of Americans to economically suffer. In addition, homelessness and crime is through the roof. There is a tremendous amount of domestic issues inside America that these funds would better be focused on. Unfortunately, the military-industrial complex controls how our federal budget is actually constructed each year, and the author goes on to state, "The United States can afford to outspend Russia and China at the same time. The United States could go as far as to double defense spending, currently just 2.8% of GDP, and still remain below its Cold War average, close to 7% of GDP. Once the money has been allocated for this increase in defense spending, the author then shares his brilliant idea on how to actually intimidate China. Washington could always take a page from its Cold War playbook and rely more heavily on nuclear weapons to offset the local conventional advantages of its rivals. The United States could rely on threatening non-strategic nuclear strikes to deter, and as a last resort, thwart a Chinese amphibious invasion of Taiwan." So just to review the strategy here, we're going to first double the defense budget, and then we're going to potentially use non-strategic nuclear strikes to intimidate China. As crazy as that sounds, probably the most shocking part of this article comes in the last sentence. There are risks associated with nuclear deterrence. Yeah, there's substantial risk to getting involved in a nuclear war with another nuclear country. Let me give you the biggest risk, the potential for the end of all humanity as we know it. But if you're an American like me who worries about the potential for a nuclear war, don't worry, the author gives us a great assurance as to why this is actually a safe policy. But nuclear weapons have played a foundational role in U.S. defense strategy for 3/4 of a century and will likely continue to do so for decades to come. I mean, did he actually read this article before he sent it to publication? Is this really what you're advocating to do with China? This is absolutely crazy to me. In this Foreign Affairs article entitled "The Growing Danger of U.S. Ambiguity on Taiwan," authors Richard Haas and David Sachs make the argument for the American government to shift away from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity. This essentially means that the American government should formally announce America's commitment to militarily defend Taiwan in the event China were to invade. The authors argue that the U.S. government needs to send a stern message to China's government to deter them from invading Taiwan, and once again, this would be the best policy to keep peace in the Asia-Pacific region. To give you a different perspective of how America sometimes misunderstands China, I want to share with you a short clip from Yuanyuan Ang, an associate professor of political science at the University of Michigan and author of the book, How China Escaped the Poverty Trap.
The US tends to forget or not realize that its antagonistic actions and rhetoric are one of the biggest sources of support for autocratic and leftist forces in China. The US doesn't come anywhere close to appreciating this fact that whenever China is in a situation of intense rivalry with the US, that creates an environment where the pragmatists and the moderates are drowned out, and the loud nationalists get to dominate the conversation in China.
Now, the US and China have spent most of the past 5 years in a state of intense rivalry, and there is one thing that is very important for all Americans, and mostly American politicians, to understand. The more aggressive the United States is to China, the more aggressive China will be to the United States. If the United States were to follow the advice of Michael Pompeo and formally declare Taiwan a sovereign country, this would immediately put the United States and China on a solid pathway to war. To do so would not be in the best interest of all Taiwanese people, Chinese people, and quite frankly, everybody on this planet. Now, Michael Pompeo has made it very clear what his intentions are for Taiwan, but why don't we take a perspective to listen to the actual people that live in Taiwan? In this survey from the National Chengchi University, it states that only 6% of Taiwanese want independence as soon as possible. The option in the survey with the highest response was maintain status quo and decide at a later date. And even those who want to move towards independence. Notice how this category doubled from 12.8% in 2018 to 25.1% in 2021. Even this group wanted to at least maintain the status quo for the time being. The majority of Taiwanese feel the best option for them at the present is to maintain the status quo. Is this a war that the United States really wants to get into? And for what? Is this just Michael Pompeo making bold statements for political gains? Let's not forget that he could potentially be a frontrunner for the Republican Party in the 2024 US presidential election. In this report from Nikkei Asia on March 5th, it was reported the US Indo-Pacific Command has submitted a proposal to Congress for a funding of $27.4 billion over the next 6 years to build a network of precision strike missiles along the first island chain, which of course includes the island of Taiwan. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, there are trends underway that could make the current Ukraine crisis look tame in comparison. I don't believe this type of foreign policy is in the best interest of America, and quite frankly, we need to learn more from history to avoid future mistakes. Let me take you back to the current Russia and Ukraine situation so I can tie this entire situation together and help you see the full picture. Did you know that when Vladimir Putin formally came to power in 2000, one of the first things he asked America was for Russia to formally join NATO? Of course, Russia was denied entry. Interesting enough, 1 year later, September 11th happened, and this is one of the key principles inside the NATO doctrine, that if one NATO member is attacked, all NATO members are attacked. And once again, Vladimir Putin called America and spoke to President George Bush and said, "We want to help you fight terrorism. Let us know how we can support America." Once again, America decided to reject Vladimir Putin. Moving on, Vladimir Putin then went to the European Union and asked if Russia could formally join the EU. Of course, he was also rejected by the EU. They said that your country's too big, you're not part of Europe, and once again, Russia and Vladimir Putin was rejected. Not only was Vladimir Putin and Russia rejected multiple times, they were also given a guarantee that NATO would not expand 1 inch further east, but of course we know how that situation unfolded, is that NATO expanded east 5 times, going directly against the Russian border. The United States could have done a lot more for Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, but it chose to treat Russia as an inferior country, and one that didn't deserve the respect from America. This is why some scholars actually believe Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine is the result of a US government's missteps in foreign policy. Now, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm 100% against the war in Ukraine and call for an immediate ceasefire. I don't support what Putin has done, but I also recognize that the US has played a role in escalating the situation. And this is my biggest fear when it comes to Taiwan. In my opinion, there is no need for China to militarily invade Taiwan. Unlike Ukraine, which has been a sovereign nation recognized by the UN for over 30 years, Taiwan has always been officially recognized as part of China. This is a policy that the United States has stood by for the past 50 years and actually has been the cornerstone of the US and China relationship. The goal of today's video was to highlight the need for smarter foreign policies. When you have a Georgetown professor advocating that we need to double the defense budget and then use nuclear warheads to threaten China, to be honest, that article is absolutely appalling, and anybody that reads it should absolutely be alarmed. And this is what I really want. I want more Americans to be more aware of what a lot of our politicians and a lot of these people are actually advocating. We do not want to get into a nuclear conflict with any country, whether it be Russia or China, and we have to really think carefully about how we are going to be moving forward in this world. America and China may never be close friends, but there is one thing we must learn not to be, and that's enemies. Everybody, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to spend it with me here on YouTube. If this is your first video of mine that you're watching, I invite you to hit that subscribe button. And once again, I want to give a huge thank you to Webull for sponsoring today's important message. Once again, if you're interested in investing in the stock market or cryptocurrency, make sure you take advantage of this promotional opportunity. It's a fantastic offer. Click the link down below, and I look forward to seeing you all in a future video.